I watched that 60-part story so you don't have to. That's Millie, and she's here telling us about the Engagement Swindler. Now, this story broke about like a week and a half ago, I would say. And basically, this girl named PK Mackey, who I actually know in the real life, shout out to PK Mackey. So PK Mackey ends up making this video saying, I don't know if you know this guy that proposed to his wife at the Tyler the Creator concert in Atlanta last night, but I need you guys to let that woman know that he is still married and has been married for many years. She basically goes on to tell us that he is the black Tinder swindler. And she's like, he scams, he lies, he cheats, he does this. This is his like habitual action. And she's like, you want to know why I know he does this? Because I used to be his friend. It's like, I know 3 of the women that he used to be with. He is a bad person, essentially. Like, tell that woman to run for the hills. So she posts that video, it goes viral. All of a sudden, every single one of this man's past partners start coming out with a story time. Not to mention, there was already a woman that did a story time like back in 2021, specifically about Byron, who is our black Tinder swindler. Ultimately, we're just going to go over Camille's story, and as we're going over that, the other women's stories will also be integrated into her main story. So Camille tells us that she got with him back in 2020 on this app called We Plus during COVID. His appearance gave her hesitation because he was like 6'5", light skinned. She's usually into chocolate men, so she was like, okay, I'll give this a try. So initially they agreed to meet at a Starbucks, and after she called him when she got there, he didn't pick up. She's like, okay, well, I'm gonna leave. He ends up calling her later on and apologizing, and they agree to meet again. Once they both agreed to get like COVID tested, they met up in the parking lot. He pulled up in an Audi, which was matching, you know, the wealth that he was trying to portray on his profile. So she's like, okay, bet. They end up hitting it off. They end up hanging out in the parking lot for about like 30 minutes. They dip out, and then they end up not talking much the rest of the week. The reason why Byron ends up telling Camille he can't talk that week is because he said his auntie was visiting. And while his auntie was visiting, he was just going to be really busy. He ends up sending Camille a picture with him and a little chihuahua. The following week, they end up agreeing to meet up. So she actually invites him over to her house, and she said that once he got there, within 20 minutes, he was already trying to get hot and heavy. They ended up doing the do, and then he left like shortly after that. They did do it unprotected, but she said that she felt so connected to him and she had this emotional draw to him. She felt like it was safe for her to do that. He ends up leaving. They agree to hang out again. So she tells him like, okay, come over, I'll cook for you, whatever. He ends up doing a no-show, right? So at this point, she's pissed and she's calling him. He's not answering. She's so pissed. She's crying. He's not picking up. At this point, she's like, wow, I'm so dumb. I like slept with him and I did it unprotected. She's like freaking out at this point. She's like, he just played me. Later on that night, he ends up texting her and being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I ended up getting caught up in the LA curfews. If you guys remember back in COVID, we used to have a curfew at some point. And he said, oh, I got caught up in that and I was arrested and sitting on the curb for 4 hours. So at this point, she went from being like really upset to like worrying about his well-being. And she was like, oh my God, are you okay? He made up this excuse and was like, oh, they looked up my plates and saw who I was. And she was like, what? And she didn't think to like look him up at this point or like do a background check. So she was like, who are you? Like, he's trying to, I guess, insinuate like, oh, I'm somebody in Hollywood. And so at this point, she completely forgot that he had just like pretty much ghosted her, right? And so now she's just like, okay, at least I know what happened. She started feeling better about the situation. She's still freaking out about the fact that she, you know, did it with him unprotected. And so she's like, look, if we're gonna hang out again, I'm gonna need you to get tested. I'm gonna get tested. He's like, okay, bet, I'll go ahead and get tested, no problem. Oh yeah, I've been referring to him as Byron. When Camille first met this man, he introduced himself as Caleb though. So when Camille decided, oh, I think I'm gonna do a background check on this guy, she was typing in the name Caleb. All that was popping up was like Caucasian men. And she's like, what, like, why can't I find anything on this man? And so obviously she found that a little suspicious. So Camille ends up asking him like, hey, did you go ahead and get tested? He was like, oh, because I'm in the military, we have like mandatory testing every 3 months. So I'm honestly good. Like, I don't need to get checked. And so she didn't think he was lying. She was like, okay, I believe you. Another thing Camille found really suspicious was the fact that he would only come over for like an hour. He would tell her like, oh, it's like a 4-hour trip. So like, I gotta, you know, just come here and leave right after. And she was just like, oh, okay. So for her birthday, she wanted to go to Big Bear. So she was like, hey, come to Big Bear with me. And he's like, okay, cool, I'll do that. And she basically offered to like pick him up in her truck because she was like, I can just drive us there in the snow. You don't have to worry about it. So he agrees and he's like, okay, bet. So the day of them leaving for Big Bear comes, and then all of a sudden he messages her and he's like, oh, don't worry about like picking me up. I'll meet you at your house. And she's just like, okay. So at this point she's thinking like, why doesn't he want me to see where he lives? Like each time we've hung out, he's come over to my house. Why haven't I seen his place of residency? So while at Big Bear, they have a good time. They go hiking, they watch some anime, they're enjoying themselves. Randomly while they were hiking, he asked her like, would you be down to like like walk down a red carpet with me one day for an event? And she's like, yeah, I would feel comfortable. Like, I don't have a problem with that. So he's really trying to paint this picture that he lives this like very like lavish lifestyle. So while they're in Big Bear, she notices he has tattoos of like names and then like dates. And she's like, what are these dates and names? And he's like, oh, that's like my oldest son's birthday. And she's like, oldest son? I thought you told me you only had one child, a daughter. And he's like, oh, no, I have a son as well. And so she's like, oh, okay. And then she's like looking at his body again. And she's like, well, what's this name and date? And he's like, oh, that's my other daughter. And she's like, you have two daughters? And he's like, yeah. But, you know, when I came back from Afghanistan, I found out that, you know, it wasn't my daughter. And she's just like, okay. She just believed him. She didn't think that he'd be lying about something like that. So she was just like, oh, okay. He basically looks at her and goes, I thought I told you I had a son. And she's like, no, you didn't. So Camille ends up asking him, like, how did you know that it wasn't your daughter? And he's like, oh, one day me and my boy were driving and we were pulling up and they were walking down the street. And he looked at her and he was like, that don't look like your daughter. And then ever since then, I never called her my daughter anymore. So then Camille asks about the oldest son. She's like, where is he? Do you talk to him? And he's like, no, I don't talk to him. I haven't seen him in a really long time. His mother is Jehovah's Witness, so he's protected by the state. And I just have no way of communicating with him. He's like, I'm hoping that when he turns 18, I'm able to like speak to him and finally like tell him the full story. He basically told her that he was living in Georgia with his baby mama in a compound because her uncle had like a lot of money. Basically, when him and the baby mama's relationship completely took a turn, the family like exiled him and didn't want to really deal with him anymore. So he decided to just like leave. So hearing that story from that perspective, obviously Camille was like condemning the mother and her actions. But at the end of the day, she didn't really know the full story. When they get back from Big Bear, Byron ends up sitting in the car for a while before he pulls off. And in the front, Camille ends up having this whole altercation with her neighbor, who at the time was like an extremely racist person that was like writing slurs. It was during, you know, the George Floyd stuff. And the guy basically threatened to call the cops. Camille was just completely taken back because she was like, why would you want to call the cops? Are you trying to get me hurt? Like, what is wrong with you? And the whole time that this is happening, Byron doesn't do anything. He's just like in the car. Also, I don't think Byron saw anything, so that's why he didn't do anything. So finally, Camille's just like, I've had enough. I have to ask this man. She just straight up asked him, I feel like you live with another woman. And he told her, no, I don't, but I do have roommates. But I did find a new place, but it's not going to be ready for a while, so I have to go to Colorado for a month. But obviously, this like, you know, stressed out Camille because she's like, okay, I'm falling for this guy, and now he's going to be gone for a month. Like, what am I about to do? So Camille ends up deciding to like make this cute little thing where she like has letters where every day he opens it, and then it leads him to the final letter where it's a surprise of her coming to Colorado to visit him during Valentine's Day weekend. Byron ends up leaving February 1st, right? February 2nd, he ends up calling Camille and being like, hey, I have something to tell you, but I'm scared to tell you because I feel like you're going to stop talking to me. She's like, look, I'm a really understanding person. Just tell me what you have to say. So what he tells her is like, okay, my name is not actually Caleb. It's actually Byron. So he ends up sending her this like website. It's like a bio profile basically where it like explains that he's like a veteran and that he's an actor and all these other things. And she's like looking at it and it says like his name is like Byron. And she's like, well, why'd you lie about your name? Like, what is that about? And he's like, well, I was in a relationship with a high profile celebrity's daughter. Byron goes on to tell her that he's been engaged to this celebrity daughter for quite some time now. We're going to end things. The father ended up suffering from a stroke and they just thought it was too much to like announce their engagement being over. So he's been putting on this facade of still being engaged, but he can't handle it anymore. Camille was like, okay, I guess I can understand wanting to avoid media scrutiny. And honestly, in her mind, she had already made up that she was going to be with this man. And he really didn't have to explain much. She was going to justify and explain things away herself anyway. She says she's a very tenacious person. And when she decides like she likes something and she wants it, she's just going to go get it no matter what. Byron also mentioned that he was actually in fact living with her and her family due to COVID reasons, but the father's stroke was complicating, you know, him moving out of that situation at the moment. So this is when Camille learns that he was never living with roommates. He was living with his ex-fiance and her family still. All Camille is thinking is, how am I going to explain this to my mother, who I've already introduced her to as Caleb? She's going to think I'm absolutely out of my mind. And so she's just like, whatever. And then to top things off, she also ends up finding out that that dog, that little chihuahua he sent her a picture of saying it was his auntie's dog, was actually the ex-fiance's dog. Camille said her and her sisters and her moms are nosy by nature, and so they had already conducted their own background check on Byron at this point, and they had done a social media digging too. And though the background check didn't reveal anything weird, what did pop up was Paige's video from 2021 that her mother discovered of her describing Byron in the situation that she was in with this man. Paige is the ex-fiance, the true owner of this chihuahua. She had gone on and told this 4-part story about, the terrible, horrible things that Byron did to her during their engagement. Camille's mom obviously sees this and freaks out. She's like, oh my God, I have to get this to Camille ASAP. At the time, Camille wasn't in the space to watch those videos though. She downloaded them and she kept them, but she was just like, I'm not ready to watch these. Also, Byron did a really good job of doing like 95% lie, 5% true. When Camille's mother came up to her and said, hey, I found Byron's ex-fiance, look at her videos. Camille was like, oh, he already told me about that. Like, I already know about what she's gonna say. I don't need to watch her videos. Byron has also done a good job at that point of painting Paige as this like crazy person that was like bipolar and couldn't be trusted. And so in Camille's mind, she knew everything she needed to know about the situation. So this is the part in the story where Camille starts going into Paige's videos, the 4-part videos that she uploaded back in 2021 about Byron and what he did to her. Paige is the woman that Byron was engaged to right before he met Camille and left Paige for Camille. Paige starts off her story time by saying, imagine being engaged to the love of your life only to find out that he got somebody else pregnant. She said she met this man in 2018 and he swept her off her feet only to find out that he's a sociopathic narcissist. After just 11 months of dating, Byron had proposed to Paige in this big, massive flash mob proposal, like as public as can be. Wedding planning for them was really smooth until the pandemic hit, and then everyone got hit with a stay-at-home order. When that happened, it became really difficult for Byron to keep up with his multiple lives. Everything around him and all his little lives were starting to crumble, and she was starting to notice that this guy is not faithful to me. A narcissist's worst nightmare is a person that has a relentless pursuit of the truth. This is what Paige says, and she just wouldn't let up. She just kept questioning him. Every time his stories wouldn't add up, every time what he said didn't make sense, she questioned him, and it really drove him absolutely insane. And because of her relentless pursuit, Byron turned up his gaslighting and his emotional abuse. One thing Paige points out that Byron did very masterfully was use the very things that she shared with him about her insecurities, about her downfalls and her weaknesses against her when she would try to ask him about things. He'd be like, oh, it's because of your past. It's because of your insecurities that you won't believe me. This is a you problem, not a me problem. He would just like flip the very vulnerable things that he shared with her against her to prove that he's not doing anything. She's just tripping. She's the one out of her mind. Paige ends up sharing a story where he lied to her about going to Big Bear. He said that he was going to go for a work trip or training. We all know why he went to Big Bear. He waited for Paige to go into the shower, and then he ran out the house and took her car, her Audi, and drove over to Camille's house, parked it there, and then went to Big Bear with Camille, lying to Paige, telling her he was there for work. And when she asked him about it, he told Paige, what are you talking about? I'm trying to do better for me and you and our family. The only thing that he told true to Camille about the whole Paige situation was that father did have a stroke, and he was in a medically induced coma, and this was absolutely depressing Paige, and she was having such a hard time while dealing with the fact that her engagement, there's something fishy about it. Ultimately, her father, before going into surgery again, ended up writing everybody a letter. He also wrote Byron a letter. She ends up reading the letter to Byron. 30 seconds later, he messages her and tells her, you're crazy, your family's crazy, I'm going back to Colorado to my mother, I'm not marrying you anymore. And that's how their whole engagement ended. After all of that goes down, Paige ends up finding out that this man had multiple children from multiple women that she had no idea about. He was cheating on her the entire relationship. And to top it off, this man owed so much in back child support, it made her jaw drop. Oh, and if that's not bad enough, he was married already, and he knew he was married. So the fact that he proposed to her and was like planning a wedding with her and all of this, it was a complete facade. And she was like, I can't believe he was lying to me, my family. Oh, and to top things off, the engagement ring that he used to propose to Paige, her parents bought for him. And it was $18,000. And guess what? He took that engagement ring when he left her. Mind you, by the time Camille met Byron, he had wiped Paige completely off of his social media. But he was very much still on Paige's social media. Come to find out, Paige and Byron were supposed to get married February 17th. He left for Colorado, remember, February 1st, and texted Paige like, see ya, I don't want to deal with you. But at the time, he was already dealing with Camille at that point. Wild to think that he also broke up with Paige basically 2 weeks before they were supposed to get married. And then fast forward, obviously Camille and Paige end up talking. They end up like, exchanging stories, and they obviously have a lot of love for one another. One thing a lot of these women mention about Byron is that he never leaves one relationship until he has another one already set up. And then Camille mentions like within 6 weeks of her and him talking, he was already like bringing the idea of Camille and Byron living together. Not only was he already joking about living together, he was also making jokes about having a baby with Camille already. And she was just like, I don't know about that. Valentine's Day trip to Colorado to see him. But it was also convenient because her sister at the time lived in Colorado, so she got to see both of them. So when Byron was supposed to be heading home, he ends up calling Camille, freaking out, like, I missed my flight, I need to get back home, what am I gonna do? So immediately she goes into problem solving mode, and she's like, we can figure this out, just give me a moment, like, let's figure this out. She lends him $1,500 so that he can secure the apartment. She had to go and pay it for him and get the place secured so that he had somewhere to move into. She lends him the money so that he can initially move into his apartment that he had said that he was gonna have prepared when he came back from Colorado. So Byron was also telling her, like, I need to get rid of this car, talking about the Audi. It's a lease. And she's like, well, you need to make sure you turn it in on the day that it's due or else they're gonna charge you. And he's like, oh, it's okay, they gave me some more time. And she's like, no, they don't do that. They don't give you extra time on a lease. You need to turn it in ASAP. What she wasn't realizing was that Audi was never his anyway. It was Paige's. And so the Audi disappears and he's over here like carless. She had multiple cars at the time. She had a truck and she also had a Benz. So she basically is like, hey, why don't you just drive my Benz around? Like, I can't have my man basically like carless. Because his idea was that he was going to ride a scooter around downtown because that's where he was going to get that apartment. She wanted him to see her as like a problem solver, somebody that can like help him out. And so she knows, and she's been working with a therapist to come out of that Captain Save Bro kind of like mentality that she was having with this man specifically, and was like, I'm never going to do that again for a man. So she at this point has helped him secure housing. She's given him a car to drive, and now she's sitting there like, where's my $1,500 back? And he basically is like not saying anything, and she doesn't want to nag him. She wants to be like the cool girlfriend. And so eventually he like walks up to her one day and was like, oh, I think I owe you this, and gave her the $1,500. And she was like, okay, finally. But not before she noticed that he was like buying furniture and doing all these things with his money before he decided to give her money back. After that, he wanted to go ahead and secure a car of his own, and so he ends up asking her straight up like, hey, can I borrow $2,000 and go ahead and get this car? And she's like, yeah, sure, no problem. She gives him the $2,000 after being hesitant, and then when they get to the dealership for him to pick up the car, he comes outside and he's like, oh, I need another $1,000. It has to be on your credit card. And she's like, what? Like, it's supposed to be a cashier's check. I already gave you the cashier's check. Why do you need $1,000 on my credit card? And he's like, that's just what I need. And so she's like, okay, well, I'll come in there and I'll like pay. And he's like, no, just give me the card. And at first she's hesitant and she's like, why can't I come in? He's like, just give me the card. And so she's like, okay. She hands over the card. He goes in and then gets the car. The car he ends up getting is like a BMW, and he is over the moon about this car. I mean, he is excited that he got this car, and she's confused. She's looking at him like, why are you so hyped about this BMW? Like, the Audi you were just driving was way nicer and way newer than this one. Shortly after that, Camille realizes, like, I think when this guy first met me, he gave me a spoof number, like a fake, maybe like Google number, because when he finally had revealed his real name being Byron back in Colorado, he also gave her another number. And when he was first initially messaging her, the bubbles were green. And then once he told her his real name, he gave her a real number as well, and the bubbles turned blue. And so she starts asking him like, hey, when we first met, like, did you give me like a fake number? Did you give me a spoof number? And he's like, no, I didn't. What are you talking about? She's like, you had to have, because when you told me your real name, you also gave me a different number. Like, why are you lying? Like, just tell me the truth. And she's actually giving him stories, like trying to help him come up with his own story, being like, was it a Google number? And he's like just 10 toes doubling down, like, I didn't give you a spoof number. He was basically like, my mom did tell me that my messages were coming in green. I think there was just something wrong with my phone because they should be blue. And she's like, well, no, you gave me a whole nother number. With the number that he gave her, though, she was able to finally conduct like a background check and get information off that number that he gave her. So now Byron's back in California. He's moving into his new place. He ends up getting help from his best friend. His best friend, we're going to name him Red. Red was actually introduced to Byron by Paige, his ex-fiance. The ex-fiance and Red used to go to church together, and then because Byron doesn't have a lot of friends, just like in general, she introduced Red to Byron so that he could have more friends. Most of his friends are like out of state, old Marine friends, just nobody like really in state. Red and Byron end up becoming best friends. So Byron ends up getting help from Red to move him into the new apartment. They go to the storage, which Paige and Byron used to share. He gets his stuff out of there. And towards the end, Camille hears Red say this comment of like, I'm really glad that, Byron met Camille, which she didn't know exactly what he meant by that. Once they were pretty much done moving Byron in, he was just like jumping up and down on all fours on the bed while Red and Camille are just sitting there. And he was like looking at Camille like, let's make a baby together. Let's make a baby together. And like had his tongue out. Like she said it was similar to like when Tom Cruise was jumping up and down on the couches at the Oprah show, like years back. he was acting like that. And she was like, this is kind of embarrassing in front of your best friend. Like, can you relax? Mind you, it was only like 3 months that Camille and Byron were like dating while he's jumping up in the bed, like, let's have a baby together. And really, not to mention, Byron just revealed his real name, like, not even like a month ago at this point. So, like, what do you mean, like, let's have a baby together? Of course, the friend was sitting there looking at it crazy. Red looked visibly uncomfortable while Byron was doing this. And she said that it looked like in Red's head, like a light bulb had just went off and he had just like made this massive realization or something. Red was actually getting married. Camille ends up meeting his fiance. Everything is great. Byron was supposed to plan the bachelor party for the fiance. They're not really like huge partiers or anything. For Red's bachelor, they were going to do like zip lining or something like that. All of a sudden, out of left field, Byron and Camille are just uninvited from the wedding. They're just like, don't show up, don't come. Mind you, Red and Byron had like a business together. That same day, Byron gets paperwork from LegalZoom, like basically separating the business. He was just like done with Byron. Camille was like so confused. She's like, but this is your best friend. Like, what's going on? You guys have been best friends for 4 years. Like, what's really happening? And Byron was just like, the wife just doesn't like how close me and Red are. So she like forced him to uninvite us. Camille was so confused. So she did what she thought was normal to do. And she reached out to the best friend and was like, hey, Red, like, what's going on? Like, you and Byron are best friends. Like, what happened? Red basically told her like, hey, like, shout out to Byron for having such a good woman by his side. Like, I appreciate you for like trying to fight his battles. But out of respect for my fiance, can you no longer like contact me? Camille was obviously taken back, but she was just like 100% like, I'm so sorry. For whatever reason, Byron had told Camille, do not tell Red about our Big Bear trip. Do not say anything, right? I think Camille maybe forgot or thought it was like a long time ago or whatever. She ends up mentioning it to Red, like, yeah, yada, 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 we went to Big Bear. Because Byron said that he didn't get a chance to tell Red about Big Bear yet, and Camille ended up mentioning it, she's like, maybe that's why the relationship ended up going down the drain. But either way, she never really got the answers. And she was also like, if the best friend knew something or like could have had a warning for me, he could have told me instead of just being like, don't contact me. Like, why couldn't you tell me what the real was? When Byron lost Red as a best friend, this brought him down to just 3 friends, 2 of which lived out of state, a high school friend and a military friend, and then he had PK Mackey that lived in state. So now Byron's spending more time with Camille. He's always around. At the time, Camille actually had her goddaughter living with her. All of a sudden, Byron just starts picking fights with this little girl. She's a teenager. He's just like, I don't like her. I don't like her attitude. I don't like her being around. It just became an issue. And so now his sole purpose became to get this little girl out of Camille's house. Mind you, in the background, Byron is telling Camille, like, I want to marry you. Like, you make me feel so safe. And when he said that statement, like, you make me feel safe, it kind of triggered this like protective mama bear instinct in Camille and made her want to protect him even more. And so she basically gave in at that point and was like, okay, let's move in together, and I'm gonna, you know, tell my goddaughter to go back to her house. Now, it was Camille's idea for the goddaughter to move in the first place, but she was starting to feel like maybe like I can't offer the help that she needs. Like, the girl was struggling. She was having her own, you know, growing pains, and this environment wasn't really conducive to what Camille was trying to do, definitely what Byron was trying to do. And so she just thought it was the best decision that she go back to her parents. Camille ends up helping Byron put his apartment up for sublet so that he doesn't have to pay, you know, the remaining of the lease, and that he can move in with her and not have that financial burden over his head. And then she asked him like, hey, how much like debt do you have? Like, what's your roundabout? And he was like, oh, I owe like 40,000. And she's like, oh, that's great. Like, I owe way more than that, especially because I'm a business owner. And so she was like, let's do this. Let's move in together. So they end up coming up with an agreement where he's not going to be paying any rent. She would handle all the rent, but they would both work towards paying down her debt together. It was like, if we both work towards that we can pay off my debt in like 6 months, right? And he was using terms like we and us, and he even like created like an email for them and called it like the Hopkins, which is his last name. And so he was really like telling her like, we're a team, like we're gonna do this together. Meanwhile, Camille's mom is very much following Paige's story, and she is very much invested in this girl's journey, and she's starting to notice the timeline between what's going on in Camille's and Byron's relationship and the timeline with Paige's relationship have a little bit of overlapping. And she tells Camille about the elaborate flash mob proposal, and Camille's like, girl, I don't want to hear about that. Camille's mom is just like, I don't like this man, I don't trust him. And Byron tells Camille like, oh yeah, I went to USC. And then she was like, wow, you've done a lot. Like, you went to film school, you went to USC, you were in the military, like you lived in Colorado at one point, and you were raising 2 children. Wow, like just so commendable. Of course, half those things he's lying about. Byron even had it on his LinkedIn that he went to USC and then later on removed it. And when she asked him about it, he was like, oh yeah, I got a certificate through USC online. And she was like, oh, okay. And she didn't even think like too far ahead to be like, can you even get a certification from USC online for anything? I'm not even sure if you can. So now Camille introduces us to Samantha, who is currently still married to Byron and is his legal wife. She met him a while ago. Now he left her back in 2016 when he took the car that was under her name and drove to California, stealing her furniture, stealing her things, and leaving her in a lot of debt. And during the course of Byron's and Samantha's relationship, she signed for 2 separate cars for him, one of which was repossessed. The second one was the Honda that he ended up driving from Colorado to California when he finally left his family. When he had initially left the family, he moved into a different apartment in Colorado, and he would have the kids over there and he wouldn't have food. They would go home hungry. Things got so bad, Samantha started feeding the children before she dropped them off and sending them to his house with food. And then when he ended up getting evicted from the Colorado apartment 2 months after moving in there, that's when he decided to pack up the Honda and move to California. So when he moved to California, he ended up moving in with a bunch of guys, and in exchange for him living there, he just had to drive them around. And so while he was doing that, that's when he met Van. He ended up moving in with her and told her, like, I can pay your rent with my military disability. And then when he was done with film school, Van ended up acting like his agent, and she ended up landing him a job. And when she did that, while he was working that job, that's where he met Paige. His car ends up going into default, the Honda that he was using. So now he's dating Van and he's living with her. And while he's there, he ends up ordering pizza. And when he orders pizza, he puts in his address because he ends up using Samantha's Papa John's account in order to order the pizza. And when Samantha notices that she sees like a random Los Angeles address, she ends up notifying the car company that's been basically hounding her, like, where's the car, where's the car, where's the car, we're putting it into repossession. She's like, I think it's in Los Angeles, gives them the address, they go and pick up the car. He comes out of the house one day and the car's gone. And he looks at Van and he's like, damn, my car is gone. And so Van feels bad and she gives him her car. Van's car, however, has a tracker on it. She notices that after film school, this man's always going to a specific address. And she's like, what is this address? What is he doing there? She just assumes he's working. So she's like, okay, whatever. That address that kept popping up on the tracker was actually Paige's address. While Byron was still with Van, he ended up cheating on her for over 6 months with Paige. When Byron ultimately moved in with Millie, he brought over so many things that were an accumulation of all these women that he had dealt with. He had like alkaline water systems from like certain women. He had like TVs, all types of things that he had basically collected as like souvenirs. In this point in Camille's story, they had actually decided to go ahead and get a joint account, and she was putting in money in the joint account thinking he was doing the same. But what he was doing was just spending all the money. While Camille's putting money into the joint account, Byron is using that same account to pay his car note off for that BMW that Camille just helped him get. And so she's like, so first of all, I helped you get the car and now I'm paying the car payments for you as well. And then Byron hits up Camille one day and he's like, oh, I put $200 into the joint account. And she's like, okay, bet. Only for him to take the money out shortly after that. And then she gets a notification from her bank being like, there's $700 missing from your, savings account. And she's like, shortly after that, she gets a letter in the mail saying that the $700 was taken out of her savings account because there was a lien on her account. When Camille asked Byron about it, he was like, oh, it's probably because of the actions of my father. Me and him have very similar names. And I sometimes get consequences for like his doings. And she's just like, oh, okay. She doesn't think much of it. And then one day randomly he walked up to her, similar to other times, and was just like, here, I owe you $700. And then she was just like, okay. So Camille starts sharing her story about like fertility and her issues with that. And at the age that she was at, I think she was like 35 years old, she was like down to one ovary, and she was like talking to her doctor, and her doctor was like, if you're going to do something, you're going to need to do it now, whether that's IVF, fertilization, whatever that is going to be, you need to do it now. And then Byron ends up mentioning something to her like, yo, I have super sperm. And she looks at him and she's like, you have what? And he's like, I have super sperm. So now at this point, they're discussing having a baby. I mean, he's been bringing it up for like 3 months now. And so she ends up deciding against IVF and decides to just do natural inception. And she, right before, they start to like really get down to business and do what grown folks do, she looked at him and was like, we're really going to do this, right? Like, we're a team. We're going to build this powerhouse. Like, we're together, right? And he kind of like was looking down now that she thinks about it in hindsight. And he was just like, yeah, you already know. In reality, he didn't really give her like that reassurance that she was really looking for. They decided to have the baby before a wedding. Shortly after that, they were pregnant. So the daughter that Byron has with Samantha, we're going to name Byron and Samantha's daughter Luna. So during that summer, Luna ends up coming to visit Byron, and Byron basically tells Camille, like, you need to pretend that you're my auntie. You can't let Samantha, her mother, know that you are actually my like girlfriend. Otherwise, she's not gonna let my daughter come over for the summer. And Camille obviously thought that was weird, but she was like, okay, like, I don't want to impede your ability to see your daughter. Like, I'll say I'm your auntie. End up having a great summer. They take her to like Disneyland, Lego World. They do all types of things. Camille ends up buying Luna an entire wardrobe because she said that the mother like maybe almost purposely sent Luna over with clothes that were too small for her, forcing Byron to have to buy clothes for Luna, but Camille took care of that. During that summer, this is when Camille first finds out that Byron was using her credit cards without her knowledge. And she tells him, like, why are you using my credit cards? Use your own. Those are my credit cards. And he's like, what? I thought we were a team. I thought what was yours was mine. And she's like, no, that's my credit cards. Use your own. So she started locking her cards, right? But she had a different wallet that she had like cards that she doesn't use very often. And that's how he was managing to get to her cards, because he was going into that wallet. Now, the only reason he even had access to the cards in the first place was because she had made him an authorized user. What he was doing was like small transactions that she might not have noticed, but they were like obviously adding up, right? So she was just like, screw this, I'm just gonna lock my cards. Because then she also realized that like anytime he went to Target or anything like that and was like bringing her things back, like, oh, I bought it for you, he was using her own money. So she's like, it was basically like I was buying it for myself. Camille and her mother had like a Home Depot card together, and her mother calls her one day and she's like, hey, there's like fraudulent activity happening on the Home Depot card. There's like gift cards being purchased like $300, and there's like a military discount being used. And so immediately when Camille heard military discount, she was like, Byron. And she walks up to him and she goes, have you been using my Home Depot card? And he obviously acts clueless. He's like, no, I'm not. And so Camille's mom is obviously convinced. She's like, yeah, this man has been doing fraudulent stuff on our card. She's like, we're gonna have to shut this whole card down. And so Camille's like, okay, let's do it. They shut the whole card down. Camille saw charges for like GameStop, PlayStation. She was like, he was probably taking like women on dates. She was like so confused by his like financial decisions. Not to mention, she had told him like, you don't even have to pay rent. So like, how are you not paying rent and you don't even have money and you're still like basically scamming me out of my own money? Also, he had just gotten an increase on his military disabilities. He was getting like 80%, which is a lot, especially in California. They pay based on states a little bit. Camille ends up finding out in hindsight that the reason why Samantha didn't want Luna to be around women constantly and why Byron had her saying that she was his auntie was because Samantha was tired of every time Luna coming over to Byron's house and there being a different woman there. Creating a relationship, creating an attachment to this woman, and then only for Byron to go and like play this woman, scam her, and then discard her, and now Luna's left like abandoned because she's like, why is this woman gone now? So Samantha made a rule across the board, like, I don't want you to introduce our daughter to any more women that you're dating. But obviously when this was like actively happening, Camille had no idea. The stress in the relationship between Byron and Camille and then Camille's mother had gotten so bad. Camille wanted nothing to do with family during the holidays. She basically planned a trip to Hawaii for the holidays for her and Byron. He doesn't contribute anything financially to the trip at all. They end up going out there. I think she's like 4 months pregnant at this point, and she's like not getting any financial help from this man at all. And then to top it off, when he would do gigs, because he was like an actor, when he would do gigs for like commercials or anything like that, he would all of a sudden tell her like, oh, I didn't get paid for that. Oh, I had to do it for free. He would do photography gigs and then again say that he didn't get paid for it. And she would just believe him and be like, oh, okay. So on their last day in Hawaii, she basically tells him like, hey, I really need you to step up. The baby's going to be here soon. I need you to like get a job. I really need you to help me financially. And he basically goes off and he's like, why would you ruin our trip? Why couldn't you wait until we got back home to discuss this? Like, we were having such a good time. And she's just like, this is something that I need to be able to talk to my partner about. I need to be able to have these conversations with you, even if it's about tough things. While they were in Hawaii, he ends up doing like a photo shoot / video for Camille, announcing, you know, the pregnancy and the fact that he's having a child with her and all of this. And he puts it together in a video, right? In hindsight, looking back at it, she's like, oh, it looks kind of rushed. But at the time, of course, she thought it was like a beautiful announcement. She wanted to post it on social media. And she was like, oh, and even though you don't post me on social media as of right now, you're posting this baby announcement. You're going to be on the same page with me about that. And she was like, this is my miracle baby. I didn't know if I was going to have a child. I want the whole world to know about it. Camille knew about like Paige. She knew about Samantha. And so when he was about to post, you know, the baby announcement, he had posted Camille in the past, like on his private Facebook, but he told her like, don't worry, like, you know, Samantha's blocked. Like, they're not going to be able to see this announcement. She's like, okay, I don't want her to find out about you having a child from this announcement. I'm assuming once the baby announcement announcement was posted. They went to Hawaii in December. They announced it in January. Shortly after that, Samantha, which is Byron's wife and Luna's mother, ends up reaching out to Camille and sending her this like long ass letter. Camille said she was driving when she read it for the first time and she didn't really like soak in all the information. She took what she needed from it and just kind of never read it again until she was actually telling us this very story. And I'm actually going to read it for my notes because it's a lot. She screenshots it and she sends it to Byron immediately and she goes, "Is this Samantha? Is this, you know, Luna's mother?" And Byron's like, "Yeah." The first thing that Samantha says in her message to Camille that rubs Camille the wrong way is that Samantha says, "Welcome to the club. You are baby mama either 4 or 5. I'm not quite sure." This immediately offended Camille. She's like, "What do you mean, welcome to the club? I'm not a baby mama." Camille goes on to say Samantha included details about Byron's past relationships and the refusal to take a paternity test for a recent child he had a year ago while he was with Paige and he popped up in Colorado. Samantha said, "You can talk to that mother too. She's in Colorado." The reason why Samantha knows about this woman is because that woman specifically reached out to Samantha and was like, "I would love for our daughters to meet. They look just alike." Samantha also details in the message that Byron actually had another wife, a first wife, and he also had a child with another woman named Britt. So now if we look at the timeline, we have his first wife, who we're just going to name Lucy. And then from Lucy, he moved on to Britt and had a child with Britt. After being with Britt, that's when he was with Samantha, had a child with Samantha. After he left Samantha, he moved to California. That's when he met Van. Van got him that job on set. That's when he met Paige. He did not have a child with Van or with Paige. With Paige, he got engaged to her. But at that time, he was already in a relationship with Camille. And now the young lady in Atlanta at the Tyler, the Creator concert. When Byron tried to marry Britt, it was annulled because he was still already married to Lucy. He was, however, engaged to Van for a short period of time and then engaged to Paige for a short period of time as well. It's during the relationships with Van and Paige that Samantha made the rule that Luna wasn't allowed to meet any more of Byron's women because she had grown close to both Paige and to Van. And when they both ended up ultimately leaving her life, she was heartbroken. Samantha described Byron as a deadbeat father who doesn't pay for his children, who doesn't talk to his daughter, who doesn't talk to his son, who doesn't talk to his other daughter, and essentially just like doesn't leave relationships until he has another relationship lined up. Samantha was like, "I'm willing to bet my bottom dollar that he was still with Paige when he got with you," which he was. During this letter, this is when Camille finds out about the $18,000 engagement ring that he stole from Paige, and she was like, "If he proposes to you, chances are he's going to use that ring, so beware." And then also she said, "When he proposed to me, it was because I found out that he was still married, and then I had to buy my own engagement ring for him to propose to me with." Mind you, Samantha was 7 months pregnant when all that happened, when she had to buy her own ring. Samantha also told Camille, "Byron told us that he was going to Hawaii last minute. We thought he was going to come and spend Christmas with us. He told Luna the day before that he wasn't going to be able to come to Colorado and that he had to go to Hawaii for work. Only for me to find out with the video that y'all posted for the baby announcement that he was in Hawaii with you and that you're actually pregnant with his child." Mind you, Camille told Byron to tell Luna and Samantha that he wasn't going to be able to like have Luna for the holidays because they were going to go to Hawaii. She had specified, like, let them know. Byron waited until the last moment because he does this thing where he comes to people at the last possible moment and he like freaks out so that the other person can take on the brunt of the responsibilities and either have to pick up the bill or just be okay with him like flaking because it's so last minute. What else are you gonna do? Also at that point, Byron had not spoken to Luna since Christmas. Samantha was like, "The only reason I even found out about you, Camilla, was not because Byron told me. It was because I looked at plane tickets and your name was there, and when I asked about your name, he said that you were his father's significant other and that you were not his partner and that you just happened to like pick her up from the airport." Samantha didn't buy it though. She felt like Camille was his new partner, so she had asked Byron, like, "Let me talk to her, let me talk to Camille." And he basically ignored her and was like, "Whatever, I'm not gonna let you." Even though Samantha had made the rule, like, "You can't have my daughter around all these women, like, I want to know them before you introduce them." Samantha signs off the letter saying that Byron is a sociopathic narcissist. He will not work, he has not worked, and that he leaves just a trail of destruction everywhere he goes. That's all Camille read, was "he doesn't work." That absolutely like sent Camille. She was like, "What?" She didn't hear nothing else in that letter. All she heard was "he doesn't work." Camille wasn't even familiar with these terms at that point. This is like early 2022, I believe. Samantha was trying to tell her, This man will gaslight you, he will manipulate you, and then when he's done playing with you and he's sucked everything out of you that he possibly can, he's going to discard you and move on to the next. Samantha also let Camille know, like, he has a tendency of leaving women in financial ruins. He left Van with nothing but $20 left to her name. She had to pay off the lease to the apartment they got together. She had 2 cars at the time, a New York Benz and a Lexus, and he was driving the Lexus around at the time. And he pretty much left her for financial ruins. He left Samantha with a bunch of debt. Both cars had gotten repossessed by that point. In the end, Samantha was like, you need to question why he's so comfortable getting women pregnant so early in the relationship. He got me pregnant at 4 months. You got pregnant around 4 or 5 months. Not to mention, he even tried to get Van and Paige pregnant early on too. I think the biggest thing that Samantha hates is that Byron tends to use their daughter Luna as a pawn piece and to manipulate her and control her still. So she was like, look, I'm not coming to you as a bitter baby mama. I'm trying to warn you. But at this point, Camille's 7 months pregnant. She's far too deep in. I guess Samantha ends up finding out that during Paige's proposal, that flash mob that he did, he actually had used Luna a part of that performance, and that also made her obviously be like really attached to Paige and like be involved in their love story because she was there for the proposal, right? And you know, Camille outlines how the way that he left Van and the way that he left Paige was like super cowardly and malicious. He also lied. One of the lies that Byron had told Camille was that his own grandmother was the one that was in the hospital with COVID. I forgot when he used that excuse. He used it at some point, but it wasn't his grandmother that was in the hospital. It was actually Paige's father that was in the hospital. When Camille and Byron had first started dating, she didn't see him for a few weeks, right? And she didn't think much of it, but when she asked him about it, he had told her that his grandmother on his father's side was in the hospital with COVID, and that he was like in the car with his aunties, like reminiscing and crying and like, you know, sharing a special moment. And so she felt really bad for that. Come to find out, it wasn't actually his grandmother that was in the hospital. It was Paige's father that was the one in the coma. And then ultimately, the reason why a lot of times these women end up finding out about the other person or about child support that he owes is because he never does forwarding addresses. And so these women end up receiving letters and they get informed that he owes money or that he has another child. Samantha ends up sending her that long letter. She ends up sending her a bunch of screenshots with evidence, you know, trying to back up her case. Initially, Camille's just thinking like, why is everybody ganging up on this man? Like, why does everyone have a problem with him, right? So she's like asking him, she's questioning him. She's giving him a plausible story that all he has to do is like agree with, and she'd be like, you know what, I thought that's what was happening. Like, he didn't even have to come up with anything. He didn't even have to lie. He was just sitting there like nodding like, yep, that's what happened. And so she, again, like I said, she was already convinced that this was going to be her man, and it was going to be very hard for anybody to come in and like give her any information that was going to lead her to think any differently about this man at that point in time, at least. When Camille asked Byron about this letter, he was very calm. He was very like nonchalant, not freaking out. And I think that also kind of like threw her off. And Camille's like, what is she talking about? You have 2 other wives. I didn't know you had 2 other wives. I thought Samantha was your only wife. And then Byron's just like, I don't know. He just kept saying, I don't know. Samantha gave Camille a number to call for her to find out like how much money in back child support Byron actually owes. And when she looked it up, the number ended up saying he owed like $17,000. When everything came full circle though, and she really got to see the number, it really was closer to $83,000 that this man owed in back child support. He had cases in California, cases in Colorado. It was like all over the place. Up until this point, Camille's pregnancy was pretty stress-free, pretty like, it wasn't an emotional roller coaster, it was pretty calm, right? So when Samantha's letter came in and she wasn't really getting like concrete, clear answers from Byron and nothing was really being solved, she was just like, you know what, I just can't deal with this right now. Like, I need to focus on my miracle baby. This is my rainbow child. This is the only thing that matters in life right now. So she gave her phone over to Byron and she was like, block them all. Anybody that can reach out to me and say any type of damning information or like that could send me into a spiral, I need you to block them. So he sat there, he blocked all of them. Every single person that could possibly reach out to Camille and tell her information. He also blocked them on her business accounts too, not just her personal accounts. Camille is very pregnant at this point, and she's still, she said, waddling around and going to work. And one day she gets a call from Byron and he's pissed and he's going off. And he's like, your mom contacted Samantha. They've been in contact, da-da-da-da-da. And Camille's like, what? What happened? She's like, there's no way. She gets off the phone with Byron and she calls her mom and she asks her mom, like, have you been talking to Samantha? And her mom's like, yeah, I have. And Camille goes off. It's like, why don't you want me to be happy? Why can't you just be happy for me? Like, I'm about to have my baby. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you so like against us and against our happiness? And I think the reason why Camille came with so much heat was because Byron was like, if your mom keeps this up, I'm gonna lose access to Luna. I'm not gonna be able to be around Luna. Da 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 da. And so when Camille called her mom, she was like, came with the smoke. So the way that Camille's mom and Samantha ended up getting into contact was when Samantha sent whatever first way she used to contact her. She wasn't sure if Byron got to it first, right? She ended up messaging her through her business profiles as well. And so her business profiles, Camille's mom has access to. So Camille had deleted the original message. She was just like, I don't want my mom to see it. Camille didn't know that Samantha also contacted her through her business profile as well. So when her mom got a hand of it, she read it and they started talking. And so Camille's like, damn, like I was trying to prevent this. Previously, Camille's mom had asked her, like, are you going to talk to Samantha? Are you going to get like her point of view? And Camille was like, no, I'm not going to talk to her. Camille was standing on 10 toes that Byron had told her everything she needed to know. She was like, I don't need to talk to these other women or see their points of views. Byron is telling me everything. But in hindsight, she knows now he was definitely not telling her really anything at all. After that phone call, when Camille goes off on her mom, their relationship really takes a hit. They end up not talking that much, and Camille kind of falls back. She's like, I'm just going to focus on my baby. But really, this is just a narcissistic tactic called triangulation, where they pit people against each other. And it causes you to be isolated because now you have beef with this person that was probably in your life long before this person came into your life and will be in your life long after this person is gone. But, you know, the narcissist notices that. They notice that unconditional love, that support that you're getting from that outside factor, whether it be a friend, a mom, whatever. And it becomes their sole purpose to isolate you from that support, because the more you are in an isolated place, it's easier to manipulate you. At this point in time as well, Camille had stopped putting money into that joint account that she had with Byron, and she had realized, like, if I keep putting money into this account, the child support garnishes that was what the lien on the account were. We're gonna keep hitting her account. So she's like, I'm not gonna use it anymore. Her mom was the one that was doing the bank deposits for her business at that point. Camille has like a mobile grooming for dogs. And so Camille ends up calling her bank and being like, hey, I'm really pregnant. It's really hard for me to get around. Is it all right if my partner comes to the bank and does the deposits for me? Because I guess in certain banks, you know, you have to be the account holder in order to put a cash deposit in. But her bank had known her for so long. They were like, yeah, no problem. Your partner can definitely do the cash deposits for you. So Camille would count the cash down from her business at the end of the day. She would write it down. She would give Byron the deposit. He would go to the bank and he would send her a deposit slip, right? And when he sent her that picture, it kind of disarmed her because she was like, okay, obviously he's putting the money in the account, right? And then he would tell her things like, babe, when you double check my work, it makes me feel like you don't trust me. Again, manipulating her. And so she's like, oh my God, I don't want my partner to not think that I don't trust him. Like, I'm just not going to double check these numbers anymore, right? Because she's very meticulous. Like, you can tell she's very much a type A person. And so for him to be able to disarm her like that was a huge win for him. So now he starts taking the deposits to the bank, and then he would come back and be like, oh honey, you were a few $100s off. And she'd be like, what, really? And he's like, yeah, you have mom brain though. It's because you're pregnant. Don't worry about it. You were a few off. It's all settled. And so she would be like, oh, okay. But really, in hindsight, looking back now, he was swiping money off of her cash deposits. Mind you, at this time, it's COVID. She has 3 units that drive around for her and do the grooming. At the time, she was only down to 1 unit. 2 of the units were not being used because she didn't have enough workers. 2 of her workers quit. So it was just down to 1 car that was driving, her and an employee. And that employee wasn't willing to work any more hours than they were already assigned. And so money was tight. And then to make matters worse, this man is swiping money off of her deposits. And at the time, you kind of have to like drive the trailer with the car. And so she knew how to do it, and she knew how to train people to do it. She would try to train women to do it, but being pregnant and then women being a little bit more timid, it was hard for her. And then when she would hire men that were like, yeah, I can totally drive a trailer, they would end up doing something called like jackknifing, and they would damage her bumper. And so she was just like, look, I can't train anybody. I just got to work off this 1 unit that I have and just do as much as I can. But things were getting really, really stressful at this point. So now it's getting closer to her baby shower. Her friend from high school ends up organizing it. And during that time, Byron is like making, you know, suggestions on like, I should get you a push gift. She's like, forget a push gift, get a job. That's what would help me a lot. And then they had decided like they were going to get married and he was going to propose after they, you know, had the baby. But she's also sitting there like, I've seen friends of mine, their partners had to get like a second job in order to pay for their engagement ring. You're not even willing to get a first job. Like, I don't know how realistic you proposing is going to be. So in her mind, him proposing to her was like, I'm not interested. Not to mention her dream wedding is like Crazy Rich Asian style, you know, like with the waters and the swan and all that. It's so beautiful. It's one of my favorite wedding scenes. But like, that's what she wanted. And she was like, that's not what you're going to give me. You're not going to give me something even similar to that. So she wasn't really like stressed about the marriage. She was like, I really want this baby. The day before Millie was scheduled to have her C-section and give birth to her baby, her mother reaches out and she's like, look, I know we have our differences right now. You're still my child. That's my grandbaby. I want to be there. Can I please be at the delivery? Camille was like, yes, of course, you can be there. So her mother is there. Byron is there. Byron's just like playing Nintendo Switch the whole time. She had one too, so they would play. And she had an all-black team at UCI taking care of her and the baby. She brought her baby Neo into the world. Camille said her mother was staying in the lobby for the most part, but she would come in once in a while to check on Camille, and she would just like side-eye Byron and get out of there. Camille does tell us a story of her experiencing her nurse being mean to like a newer nurse, and it made her really uncomfortable. So it was like a little stressful of a situation, but for the most part, she had an easy birth. When her baby was born, he was put into the NICU for about 4 days, and then after that he was able to be released. While the baby was in the NICU, they needed like all the family history from Byron's mom, so she ends up calling Byron's mom and she ends up talking to her. She's so helpful, she's so kind, she gives her all the information that she needs. She gets off the phone with her. Byron ends up mentioning in like a flyby statement like, oh yeah, my mom's mad that she wasn't invited to the birth of the baby and your mom is here. Camille's looking at him like, what are you talking about? Like, my mom's here to support me and to like help me. Mind you, there's COVID procedures, like they can only have one person in there anyway. She's like, I don't even think that's a reason for her to be upset. But again, this was just Byron triangulating people. Samantha is really the reason why Byron still has somewhat of a relationship with Luna anyway. And so she's holding him accountable, making sure that he, you know, still speaks to the daughter. Once it was time to bring baby Neo home, Camilla just felt like maybe we should send Luna to one of your family members this summer instead of her coming straight to our house, so that way Neo can acclimate. We're going to be wearing masks. We want to be very careful with his health. And then she can still have a good summer. And so Byron's like, okay, I'm going to hit up one of my family members and I'll arrange that. So when he talks to a relative, they're like, yeah, of course, Luna can come stay with us. Just make sure you book her a round trip ticket. And Camille's like, why would he say that? It's not like you're going to leave your child with him. Byron got so offended by his relative saying that, he turned into this whole thing. And ultimately, Luna just came straight to their house for the summer rather than going to that relative's. And then here goes Byron again, trying to triangulate his family and Camille. And he's like, the family just wants to know why you're trying to control Luna and not letting her see her baby brother. What does your family not understand about Neo just getting out of the NICU and me needing to protect him? Like, it's not about me trying to control anything. So this time around, when Luna comes to stay with them, she's just like not the same as before. Something just seems kind of off. So Camille's pushing Byron to like go talk to his daughter, like go figure out what's going on. And he's just like not into it. He's just in his office working, not paying attention to her. And then sometimes he would like play video games, but he basically was like, until my mom comes to visit us, I'm not going to deal with this. And Camille just kind of observed that she had like a very strange snacking habit. And then she also was like munching on ice a lot. So because their family grew from 2 to 4 with Luna staying with them and then Byron being like 6'5", they needed to get a bigger car. She ends up trading in her Benz and getting a bigger Benz. And now he had promised, like, I'm going to pay half the note, like we're going to share this burden. Of course he doesn't. Just 5 months after having C-section, she goes right back to work because, again, things were already tight before this baby came. It's only tighter now that, you know, Luna's there, the baby just came. During this time, Byron still didn't have a job. Finally, right after the baby was born, he ends up getting a job that has him traveling a little bit, which is fine. He's traveling. It was a job where he was going to be like traveling to universities and like talking to the science department. And she thought it was weird that the job had him like paying for his hotel, paying for his rental car, like taking out a credit card in his name, like all of these things. And she's like, this is so weird. He ends up going to Arizona for like some work training or something like that. And she's like, I don't even know if that was really work training. He never went to Arizona after that. In hindsight, she truly believes he went to Arizona to go see another woman. He only got like 3 paychecks from that job, and then ultimately he stopped working it. And then he told her like, oh, I got shorted on my last paycheck. And at this time, he's only paying her like $700 for rent, which is not what they agreed upon. And then just like before, anytime he had any gig work or anything like that, he was telling her he was doing it for free. I guess in his past relationships, he had learned as long as he can contribute something to the rent, by law, he can't be kicked out. Camilla's postpartum, she's working, she's trying to train a new hire. She has all these things going on, and Byron just continuously seems uninterested in the baby. So she ends up hiring someone new, and she tells him like, hey, I need you to come and take care of the baby while I go train this new hire. And so he's like, okay, cool. So she calls him, and he's like running late at this point. She calls him and she's like, hey, like, where are you? Like, you're supposed to come, you know, relieve me. And he's like, oh, I went to go get my hair done. which was like so frustrating because she always felt like he put his hair before everything. Like his hair just had to be done. She's like, dude, what are you doing? Like I told you to come and like help me, right? She ends up realizing this man's not going to show up. So she ends up putting the baby in the back where she hadn't even really set up this car seat yet. So she's wrestling with this car seat. She's trying to put it in there. It's not really working out. And she's just like crying. So she gets the baby in there. She finally goes. She tries to train the new hire. And he ends up like, again, jackknifing her car and damaging the bumper. And so she calls Byron and she's crying. And she's just like, I'm so frustrated. I'm so overwhelmed. Da, 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 da. Obviously, she had to send the employee home. She told them like, it's not your fault. It's fine. Accidents happen. Obviously, the person ended up quitting the next day, only adding more to the, stress that she was already going through. And when she called Byron was just like consoling her. He was like, it's fine, everything's gonna be fine. It's like, well, you're not doing anything to help me to make this fine. All I needed you to do was come and take care of the baby, and you didn't even want that. You asked me for this baby, and now you can't even like put one foot in front of the other and help me. One of the things while she was pregnant that she really stressed to Byron was that in the early developments of her son, Neo, she wanted to be there. She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. She wanted to figure out a way to make that happen. And Byron was like telling her, yeah, we're going to figure it out. And then ultimately when the baby was born, she had to go back to work 5 months later. And so she was kind of like, starting to grow resentment towards that. This is when she realized her grooming business was never going to retire her. Obviously, it was like a daunting realization, and she was just getting more and more overwhelmed. Meanwhile, they're watching that show Shrinking on Apple TV, and Byron just gets the bright idea. I'm going to become a psychotherapist. I'm going to go get a certification. I'm going to go become that, and I'm going to do motivational speaking. He starts making like little t-shirts with like positive affirmations on them. And Millie, again, being that problem solver, is like, why don't you, offer your services on Fiverr? Like somebody might be able to hire you. And then you can help me pay these bills. One thing that Camille also noticed was that who Byron was in public, this outgoing, super like, extroverted person, was not who he was in private. In private, he was very quiet. He was very reserved. She didn't really know what the underlying reasons for that was, but she always thought it was interesting. During the pregnancy, Camille had gained about 80 pounds. And she had noticed one day when they went to Costco that he had looked at another woman, and she was just kind of like, wow, like, honestly, like kind of beating herself up. She was noticing that in private, Byron was treating her more like a parental figure than he was like a partner. He wouldn't cuddle her. He wasn't like super affectionate. It was like he was like one of her children, honestly. She had a California king size bed, and he would like be wrapped up all the way on the other side of the bed. And anytime they did cuddle, he wanted to be the little spoon. He never wanted to be the big spoon. Which she was like, I'm a huge cuddler. Like, I want to be held. I want to feel, comforted and safe. And I'm over here, like, holding you like I'm your mama bear. Not to mention, at this point, Camille had no trust in Byron being alone with the baby. She did not feel comfortable. She was actually taking her baby over to her parents' house to watch while she went to go work, because she was just like, I really can't trust you. Camille also didn't like how he would be at the gym and then he would come home and be like, oh yeah, this girl came up to me and tried to talk to me, like almost trying to like invoke emotion or cause jealousy in Camille. And Camille's like, I'm not a jealous person. Like, I'm very confident in myself. I'm a curvy girl. I know who I am. I know what I'm worth. Like, you can't really rile that up in me. But he would definitely try. All that really did was make Camille think, oh, he's probably sleeping with several girls from the gym. I could definitely see that. And on the flip side, Byron felt so uncomfortable with Camille's long-standing 20-year plus male friendships, and he would constantly question her about her guy friends and be like, oh, did you guys sleep together? Have you guys been intimate? Like, have you guys done that? And she's just like, no, like, these are really my bros. Like, they're here for me. They would ride for me. Like, I love them. They're just my friends though, And he was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. One of the male friends that Camille had specifically was this really tall Haitian man, and they've been friends for like years and years, and even her family knows him. We'll call her Haitian friend Zoe. Zoe actually goes to the same gym as Byron. Camille's siblings had told Zoe all about the relationship Camille was having with Byron and how tumultuous it was. One thing a narcissist is really good at is being like, don't tell people your business. Because if you tell people your business, then people will be able to shed light on bullshit, and you'll be able to be like, you know what, you're right. That is messed up. That is manipulation. I am being gaslighted. So when Zoe found out about, everything that's happening in Byron's and Camille's relationship, of course, he said something to him at the gym. Apparently, the confrontation at the gym was really spicy. And Byron ended up like trying to bark to Zoe and be like, that's my woman. Don't worry about what's going on with us. And so from Byron's perspective, when he told Camille what's happening, he was like, yeah, your friend didn't want none of this. He didn't want none of this smoke. And then from Zoe's perspective, when he's telling Camille the story, he tells Camille like, yeah, your boy, he didn't want none of this. Like, and she's more inclined to believe Zoe than she is obviously Byron the liar. One thing Camille knew for for sure was that before and after the baby's birth, her communication with Byron was not the best. And so she's like, we're going to need to go to therapy. We're going to need to figure out how to communicate to one another better. So she ended up luckily finding this male veteran that would be, of course, a perfect therapist for somebody that's an ex-Marine. And so they end up starting to go see him. He gives them some exercises to be able to do at home, and it actually starts to help. Their communication actually gets better. One of the things that the therapist highlighted Byron does is called stonewalling. It's something that a narcissist loves to do, and it essentially just means ignoring you, just acting like you don't even exist. And apparently he would do that to Camille often. Another thing that they discussed in therapy, obviously, was Byron's inability to work. And the fact that, she really did need his help. Along with the couples therapy, they also did individual therapy. Camille was also trying to get the therapist to help Byron get a higher rating on his disability so that he can get more money. Because of Byron's lack of financial contribution into the relationship, Camille was saying that she was falling into a depression. It was honestly becoming too much for her. She was really hoping that therapy can get down to the bottom of why he refuses to work. I think we all know why he refuses to work, though. I was just thinking about this. When you have a job and you have back child support, you're gonna get your paycheck garnished. All of a sudden, instead of just getting a job, Byron starts talking about, let's move to Georgia. If we move to Georgia, we can get, our living expenses cut in half. Like, we can have so much more freedom, And then Camille's looking at him like, we would still pay the same amount. We would just have more stuff and more space. Give up some money, and then when you do, we can talk about, buying a house in Georgia. But until then, I don't see any type of financial relief just because we moved to Georgia. And she was asking him how would we even do that? How would we just up and move to Georgia? And he was over here oh, we can use my VA home loan. And she's looking at him what's the point of a VA home loan when you don't have good credit? So considering the fact that their bills are about $10,000 a month, Camille was I want you to save $20,000 and then we can consider moving to Georgia. She also has this fear of being used as a beard again. It has happened in past relationships, and she was just Atlanta is not somewhere I want to go. When Camille mentioned to her family the possibility of her moving to Georgia with Byron, her family was well, I guess we're all moving to Georgia. I love her family. The way that they were not willing to let her get out of their sights too much shows how much support that she has. As much as he tried his best to separate her from her siblings and from her parents, they were not having it. This is when Camille goes into when Byron and her were awarded temporary custody of Luna, and she moved in with them in December of 2022. She doesn't go into much about what happened, what the case was surrounded. Samantha goes into it on her page. I'll tag her right here. If you guys want me to cover that, I'll cover that as well. Through whatever proceedings that happened, temporary custody was awarded to Byron. We talked about before, Camille said had she known all of the information, she probably would have done a better job of protecting the baby girl. She's I don't know what the impacts are going to be of this girl growing up with a narcissistic, sociopathic father. One thing that Samantha said in her stories that I did catch, and it gave me chills down my spine and made me sick to my stomach, is that Byron has a weird fetish for Luna. Just those words alone gave me chills. And I really hope that baby's safe. She's still in Byron's custody as of right now. The case is still open, and Samantha's still fighting for, her baby to be back. She hasn't seen her in years. Everybody in the comments was saying that, I guess in an act of due diligence, people in the comments were telling Camille that in the same way that she helped Byron take away Luna from Samantha, she should now help Samantha take Luna away from Byron. And Camille's 100%. So she did set up a GoFundMe to be able to help Samantha win back custody. I'll put that link right here. Camille does acknowledge her mistake in the situation and takes accountability for it. She also explains that she grew up in a very, sheltered Christian Oklahoma Midwest, childhood, and it did leave her a little naive, and it did leave her a little bit too trusting of people. Of course, that is not who she is today. I don't think you could even try to pull the wool over Camille's eyes, or any of these women's eyes for that matter. So now Luna's living with them. Suspicious things just start happening. One of the things that she thought was really weird was one day he ends up in Riverside County. He's why are you in Riverside? And he's oh, my cousin ran out of gas and I had to go help him and put $20 in his tank. And Camille's you drove our gas guzzling $1,200 a month car payment Benz to Riverside to put $20 in your cousin's car? That doesn't even make sense. But she was just okay. She asked him a few questions and he kind of just explained them away, and she was just okay. And then the next thing that happened was he was oh, I'm gonna go get coffee from 7-Eleven one day. And she was okay. He was dressed mad casual, shorts and a wife beater. She called it easy access outfit. And she's all right, babe. He leaves. She thinks he's gonna be back shortly. He ends up not coming back for an hour. And she's where the hell is he? She tries to look up his location. His location's not showing up. And she's When his locations did finally pop up on her phone, it showed that he was coming from like 20 minutes away. So when he finally got home, she was like, where were you? And he's like, oh, what do you mean? And she's like, I couldn't see your locations. Where were you? And he's like, oh, you couldn't see my locations because my phone was updating. So you couldn't see it. And she's like, that's not how that works. So when she really pressed him about it and was like, no, where were you? Like, I want to know the truth. He was like, oh, it's a surprise. It's a surprise. And she's like, okay, whatever. She said in that moment, she wanted to do the baby boy scene where she like pulls it out and like sniffs it because she was pretty sure she was going to smell some funky. So then fast forward that November, they end up going to the millennial tour with like Omarion and all of them. And he basically tries to pass that as a surprise that he was getting together for her that day. But she's like, that's something you would do online. Why would you go somewhere 20 minutes away from our house, be gone for like over an hour? This obviously wasn't what you were doing, but whatever. And then not to mention, he bought the tickets on like one of her Affirm accounts. It's not like you were at like a ticket office sitting outside or something, you know? And so she was just like, okay. At this point, she's like clocking things, but she's not really doing anything about them. So at this point in Camille's story, this is where she brings up PK Mackey, who's the first girl that first ever brought this whole like situation up about the engagement swindler. So she brings up PK Mackey and she's like, this was actually one of the few female friends that Byron had. And when he introduced her to PK Mackey, he was like, this is my friend, like she's just a homie, she's a comedian, da-da-da-da. Which, you know, obviously Camille found really odd because she was like, so you can have homegirls, but I can't have homeboys, like make it make sense. All of a sudden that friendship just ended. And when she asked him like, what happened to PK and you? He was like, oh, it's because I gave her advice that she didn't like, so she stopped being friends with me. Camille found it weird that Byron stopped following PK, but PK was still following him on social media. So when it came to the baby's first birthday, she invited PK, and Byron was like, what? No, why would you invite her? There's no way she can come. This is so weird, da-da-da-da. Camille was like, I already sent the notification. Either PK saw it and, you know, decided not to come, or she didn't see it at all. Either way, she did not come to the first birthday. So for Neo's first birthday, obviously Camille pays for everything. She plans it all. All she needed Byron to do was to pick up pizza and show up in an Elmo outfit. That's it. That's all. And he couldn't even do that. Her whole family shows up. The kids show up. Everybody's waiting for the food. They're snacking on like little charcuterie boards that she had put out. But like, where's the food? We want the pizza. He finally shows up mad late. Byron finally shows up with the pizza. He puts on the Elmo outfit. And then once everything is like winding down, Camille has been there since early that morning, reserving the, you know, table. She's cleaning up and stuff. And Byron's just acting so irritated and just ready to go. And he's like trying to get to a basketball game. And so she's like, okay, fine. Like take the kids. I'm going to finish cleaning up. Like just go home. She ends up packing up and cleaning everything on her own. And honestly, another really good telltale sign of narcissists is that they always ruin special days, especially if it has nothing to do with them. If it's not centered around them, even if it is centered around them and it's their own birthday, they will ruin it. I don't know what it is against holidays and special events. A narcissist hates to see one coming though. But then the other thing that also made Camille really uncomfortable was how he treated Luna. He would always yell at her or mistreat her or just like kind of like just be mean to her, bully her, you know? And it just made her so uncomfortable. Like she hated having to witness that, but she felt like I'm not her mother, I'm not her parent, you know, I have to let her parent do whatever they feel, you know, necessary. Camille's family definitely picked up on the way he treated Luna as well. This is also when Luna started telling Camille things. Now, what she was telling Camille, what the subject matter was, nothing like that was ever revealed to us. Whatever Luna was telling Camille wasn't lining up. And what Camille was starting to realize was that Luna was learning how to lie, how to tell stories, how to just like say anything. And she was pretty sure either her father was telling her to say these things or she felt like she needed to say these things either to protect her father or to, you know, stay on his good side, whatever the case might be. But she was being manipulated by some type of situation, causing her to say stories that really didn't make any sense to Camille. Later on, Camille did find out that a lot of those stories weren't true. Byron also acted really weird towards his daughter too. Like when his daughter would say like, I love you, he wouldn't say it back, or if he did say it back, it's because he needed something from her, like, oh, she's gonna have a conversation with her mom that day. He wants the daughter to speak favorably about him, so he's trying to be like all nice and like, you know, lovey-dovey towards her, but he would never want to hug her or hold her or do anything affectionate. And when Camille asked him about that, she was like, why won't you be affectionate with your daughter? Like, why don't you say I love you? Why don't you like hold her? None of that, you know? He was like, well, I don't want my daughter to think she's my woman. And this is when Camille realized this man has no separation between romantic relationships and anything else that's platonic. She was like, that's so odd. Like, why do you think that about your daughter? Like, that's your daughter. Byron never followed through with what he said. If he told baby girl, like, I'm gonna take you out or we're gonna do something, he would never follow through with that. But one day things just got really intense and Byron was like screaming at his daughter, like in a way that even like Camille couldn't stand it, and she had to intervene and be like, hey, like, relax, you know? you don't have to talk to her like that. She like was like, I can't. Camille tried her best to fill in the gap for baby girl, and she would like, take her out. She would, let her go on play dates with her friends, just try to bring as much fun and light to this girl's life, because sometimes Byron would close the door and he would just be yelling at her the whole time. Byron also spent a lot of time bashing Samantha, Luna's mother, saying things like, I would have never gotten with her. I was just initially attracted. Like, it was for financial reasons that I married her, da-da-da-da-da. Which obviously, like, what kid wants to hear their father bash their mother? Since Luna was living with them, Camille had taken over all of the financial responsibilities for Luna. She was paying for her taekwondo. She was paying for her therapy, all of these things. So again, she's begging Byron, please get a job. Please help me financially. She had pretty much ran through the $50,000 of savings that she had, trying to keep everything afloat. He was still only paying a portion of the rent, less than what he had agreed to, stating that his other bills, like his credit cards and stuff, was wiping him out. When it got to the point where it was like the baby's dedication, she wanted him to show up on time. He couldn't even do that. He showed up late, embarrassing, like sneaking into the ceremony like well after it had already begun. She also noted that anytime they did go to church, he would always like leave in the middle of the service. He would never stay the full time. He would just like go and talk to like a buddy he had made there. And then not to mention too, it was like one of the few times he would be like affectionate with her in public. He would like put his arms around her while they're at church. He just wanted to present them as if they were in a loving relationship. And in reality, he was not supportive and very distant. At this point too, Camille had stopped sleeping with him. She was like, I can't even trust you. Like, there's no way I'm going to sleep with you. Also, he was still running her credit cards ragged. He was like constantly maxing out her Target card, and anytime she would pay it down, he would just max it out again. Camille notes that in the beginning of the relationship, their lovemaking was super intense and not very vanilla. And then as the relationship went on, it just became less and less frequent and very, very vanilla. And then not to mention, like, she would be the one initiating things. He would never initiate it. And he would often like leave her feeling alone because he would stay up late on his computer doing God knows what, watching God knows what. He would try to initiate things after she's already fallen asleep. I don't know if I mentioned this in the beginning, but she used to have 2 dogs. She ended up rehoming one of them like right when she first met Byron, and then shortly after that, her other dog ended up having to be rehomed as well. He was like not pooping, he wasn't really eating, and she was like, oh, maybe something's wrong, like let me find him a new home. So she rehomes him, only to find out he had no issues. He immediately acclimates at the new house, and she starts to believe, I think it's because we were stressing him out. So now it's Luna's graduation. Camille gets her hair done, gets her new dress, all of that. They're celebrating her graduation, and like during the graduation, Byron has an attitude, and Camille's just like, why are you trying to ruin her special day? So to celebrate Luna's birthday and graduation, they decide to go to Hawaii. And this also makes up for the first Hawaii trip, which was also Camille's baby moon. They were making it up to her because baby girl wasn't able to go on that first trip. They were like, let's take you to Hawaii for your graduation and your birthday, right? Obviously, Byron doesn't help pay for anything, contribute, nothing like that. Camille asked her family if they wanted to come. They were like, no, we're good. But Byron's mom was like, yeah, I'll come. Byron was like, oh, I want to do ziplining. She always plans her vacations like 6 months in advance. So she told him, hey, you have 6 months to come up with $220 so that you can go ziplining with your daughter. I'm not going to pay for that. I don't want to do that. You can make sure you can pay for that. And she specifically told him, don't think you can take money out of the rent in order to pay for the ziplining. Make sure you have money for both. So Camille starts paying down for the trip, and then she starts to save a little bit of cash so that way she has like money for food and spending and all of that, right? So she had rolled up 10 $100 bills. That's $1,000, and she had like stuffed it somewhere. She made sure not to tell Byron about it because she was like, if this man knows about $1.25, he's spending it. So it's days before Father's Day. They're getting ready for the Hawaii trip. She goes to go put that money that she's been saving into the joint account. And she told him like, hey, I'm about to put some money in the joint account. Do not spend it. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to spend it. I never spend money out of the account anyway. Right. So she goes to the drawer. She opens up the sock drawer. She goes to take the $1,000 off. I don't think to anybody's surprise, there was only $185 left in that sock, which means he had somehow found a way to take $815 out of her money and not tell her about it. And she's so confused. So his daughter's on the couch watching TV, and she's like, hey, come here, I gotta talk to you about something. She closes the door and she's like, hey, where's my money? And he's acting clueless. He's like, what are you talking about? She's like, where's my money? I had money here. It was for Hawaii, Where is it? And he's like, I don't know where your money is. Maybe you put it somewhere else. He's like, maybe you have mom brain. She's like, well, why is there change in here? There was 10 $100 bills, and now there's $185. He's like, what? You think I took your money and then brought you back change? She's like, yes, that's exactly what I think you did. And he's just like, no, I didn't touch it. He's just like 10 toes down. I did not touch that money. He goes as far as to say, my credit cards are paid down. Why would I need to take your money? Knowing damn well his credit cards are not paid down. He starts gaslighting Camille, like, what, you think I'm gonna steal from my family? He walks off and basically tells her, you're having mom brain again. You probably misplaced it. And she's like, what? She's so frustrated. So she sends him this message like, you need to seek therapy. There's something wrong with you. Like, why would you steal from me? Da 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 da. Like, she goes in on him. She tells him, you lack accountability. You need to talk to our therapist. You need to make an appointment with him. He basically like responds with some BS reply. And he tells her, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and like book something with our therapist. So again, it's like days before Father's Day, and she had already promised Luna that they were going to go to Target and buy something for her father. So she didn't want the daughter to think anything was off. So she grabs the kids and goes to Target. And she's like super panicky at Target. She's just trying to rush and go through things. And Luna picks up on that. She goes, Camille, are you okay? Like, is everything all right? Da, 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 da. And Camille's like, yeah, what are you talking about? Everything's fine. Pick something for your dad. So she gets back home, and all Camille's thinking is, maybe I did misplace it. What if I just went off on this man and he misplaced it? This is what gaslighting will do. The whole thing about gaslighting is that it makes you question your own reality. She knew for a fact she put $100 bills rolled up in her sock drawer, and he had guilted her enough to believe that maybe she moved it, knowing she only had a thought, maybe I should move it. She actually never went through with that thought. She's over here ripping her house, flipping it upside down, trying to find this money that he has now gaslit her into believing she has moved. So she's over here like, I can't find this money anywhere. She ends up hitting her therapist for an emergency session where they discuss things, and then the topic of narcissism comes up, right? And right when they're talking, this is when Camille realizes everything that Samantha said was right. That letter just starts flooding back to her, and she's like, wow, this man is diabolical. One of Byron's coping mechanisms is that he starts pacing, right? He starts getting on the phone with people and starts pacing, trying to regain control, and just talks about nothing, like sports, whatever. She said she used to call it cupcaking. And so that's what he would do. She noticed every time things started to spin and like things were about to unravel, he gets on the phone, he starts talking to somebody about bullshit. Mind you, he's forgotten it's Father's Day. So the kids are trying to like have a picnic with him and like give him cards and all of that. But he's too busy realizing like she just figured out that you stole money from her. Camille's like, how did this broke man keep me for this long? And she's realizing there was random moments of like financial like contribution, or like him like buying her a random gift that made her think like, look, he's trying. Like, things are just not falling for him. The decks are just stacked against him right now, but he's trying. You know, he would keep her by giving her what they call breadcrumbing. That's when a narcissist kind of takes you through hell, and then for you to not leave and like be like any other person that's like, yo, I'm being abused, I need to go, they give you a little bit of something that they know specifically you want, something that would like hook, line, and sink you back into their delusion a little bit longer. Obviously, he's also displaying like avoidant behavior. When things get bad, the first thing he does is like walk away, gets on the phone with somebody else. Another thing that Camille had noticed too was that one of her biggest things was that she wanted to be home with Neo when he was first born. She wanted to have all those precious moments, and if he couldn't provide it, she damn sure could provide it for herself. At least work less and be able to like, you know, hustle smarter so that she could be home more. But because she was supporting his daughter and supporting him, like a lot of her resources were being spread thin. Her resentment for him was like literally shooting through the roof. And then to make things worse, he knew that she was at the very like finishing line of her being able to carry children. And the plan was, once they had Neo, was that they were gonna have another child right after. So then all of a sudden he starts talking about, oh, I think having 2 kids is too much. And then he says, oh, having 3 kids would be way too much, because now they're counting Luna, right? And so she starts being like, oh, so first it was, I can't stay home with Leo. Now it's like, oh, I can't have my 3rd child. Then she started noticing he would like unplug the baby monitor, and she would have to replug it. And she'd be like, why are you keep unplugging the baby monitor? And he wouldn't have much to say. He would just have his head down. And at this point, Camille had enough. She was like, I can't pay for your child's taekwondo classes anymore. You're gonna have to figure that out. Mind you, he's booking like full-on commercials, like national commercials. And he's telling her like, oh, I didn't get paid, or the payment's delayed, or whatever. She's like, figure it out, dude. I'm not paying for your daughter's taekwondo classes. And she also backed down for paying for Luna's therapy sessions as well. Camille eventually reached out to that therapist that, you know, they were both seeing, and she asked him like, hey, do you think that you can run a test, find out if he's narcissistic, like just find out if that's his like diagnosis, let me know. And so he's like, yeah, next time I see him, we can definitely run a few tests. And so she's like, okay, bet. And then she definitely hit up her mother. She cried to her and said, Mom, you were right. You were always right. Please help me get out of this situation. I need to leave this man. They start planning her escape. After the therapist did his assessment, he did come back and confirm that Byron does indeed have narcissistic personality disorder. What he wasn't able to confirm, obviously, because that takes a lot more testing, is like what level of the spectrum he is is on. Is he like so far gone there's no helping him, or is he like on the lower spectrum where intervention was still possible? That was something she was going to have to figure out. It's like, I don't even really know what this means. I'm going to have to deep dive. So she starts just diving into anything and everything, podcasts that she can listen to, books that she can listen to that were going to explain to her exactly what a narcissist is, what they do, how they operate. The therapist honestly told her, like, I don't think you should wait until the December lease is up. Like, you should just move. You shouldn't like try to like stick this out, because she's finding out in like July. And he's definitely like, you shouldn't stay. Like, you should definitely try to get out of there. Now, based on where on the spectrum his narcissism kind of fell, she was going to decide whether or not, like, if she was really going to, like, end it and, like, really leave. She's like, maybe there's a chance for rehabilitation. Maybe I can still, like, help him change his life. And she's like, based on that, I will stay with him because I never signed up to be a single mother. I don't want to be a single mother. Despite the financial struggles that they were facing, they had 2 trips planned. They were going to go to Hawaii for baby girl's, like, birthday and graduation. And then he had, like, a speaking engagement in Atlanta. She really didn't want to go to the Atlanta meeting anymore, especially because she knew he just wanted her to go there to pay for everything. She was like, I'm not really interested in going. But the therapist basically told her, if you're going to leave, you're going to need to go on this trip to keep everything like at bay and keep everything calm. But if you're going to stay, don't go to the Atlanta trip, because like, why would you go and like be his, you know, his cash cow? And so she decided, I am going to leave. I'm just going to go on this Atlanta trip and I'm going to keep everything at bay. At this time as well, Camille starts reaching out to people. She reaches out to PK Mackey first, and she's like, hey, I want to know what happened between you and Byron. And I also want to know if you can get me in contact with Paige and Van. PK Mackey was more than happy to help her start connecting with these women and hearing the full truth. She was like venting to people, finally like vocalizing that she wants to leave the relationship. She was trying to get advice from her male friends and trying to get perspective of like, why would a guy do this? Why would a guy behave like this? He was reading everything from her Apple Watch. So Camille decides to bring up the whole phone number thing again with the Google number. I guess Byron made a comment saying like, oh yeah, I never changed my number because I want my daughter to always have the ability to like contact me. She's like, what do you mean? You did change your number that time that you gave me a second number. He leaves the room. He comes back a few moments later and he's like in his acting voice and he's like, what, you caught me? You think you caught me now? And she's like, look, lying is not a good thing. Like, we need to be able to build trust. Like what's wrong with you, you know? He was just never the type to like back down from a lie. Once he says something, he's just gonna die with it and take it to the grave. Camille had learned way earlier in the relationship to shrink herself and not ask this man anything that's gonna piss him off, because he's just gonna yell, especially when it had anything to do with finances. She was just like, that's not a topic I want to bring up with my man, because he's just gonna go off. And that's a telltale sign of somebody you do not want to be around. You feel like you can't talk to your partner about certain things because they're gonna get upset or they're gonna get like all flustered. Just know that there's more to that story, and there's a reason why they're doing everything in their power to not have that conversation with you, and you need to do everything in your power to have that conversation. The biggest telltale about a narcissist, right, is their grandiose perception of themselves. They just think they can never do anything wrong. They're perfect. They could be talking about something they've never done before, just like heard about it. They would present it to you like they've been doing it for 20 plus years, like they're experts in the topic, right? They'll discredit somebody that like works in the field and be like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Camille even told Byron's mother, your son thinks like he's perfect, like he can never do any wrong. He wants to nitpick at me and like always say things about me, but if I try to give him constructive criticism, it's like it's up, right? And Byron ends up walking over and he's like, well, I am perfect, like what are you talking about? And when she said this, Byron's mom gave her like a specific look. And then Byron's mom goes, when you met Byron, did he tell you everything? And Camille's like, yeah, he told me about the fiance, about the wife, you know, he told me about the daughter, all of that. But what Camille should have asked, and she says it even, was, what is everything? What exactly should I know? She says she should have asked more open-ended questions. Later on, Byron's mom does confirm to Camille that she actually did not know everything at all. Camille kind of goes over how she definitely sees how Byron noticed her and like saw her as an easy target. Again, bringing up her Oklahoma upbringing and how naive it kind of left her. Camille mentioned that she got conned like 3 times before this ever even happened to her. So when Camille stopped paying for Luna's therapy, she told Byron, like, you need to make sure you get insurance so that your daughter can continue going to therapy. She even went as far as to ask the therapist that they were seeing, like, hey, how does he go about it? And she found out he wasn't signing up for the right insurance anyway. The family insurance is totally different than like the individual one. And so she just like always took notice. He just like seemed incapable of doing anything. Like he was like, oh, I tried to do it, but I wasn't able to. It was just like that weaponized incompetency. I think Byron is starting to pick up on the fact that Camille's completely checked out. She's planning her escape again. And then he came into the room randomly and tried to show her his like like credit card bills and be like, look, I have so much credit card debt, didn't take your money. But like, she's like, what are you talking about? You just told me when I asked you initially if you took my money, you said you didn't because your credit cards were paid off. So which is it? Are they paid or are they not paid? Like, you're not making any sense. Camille does mention she has no problem cutting people off, but obviously she was reluctant in this issue. But when he came into that bathroom while she was washing Neo and tried to show her his maxed out credit cards though, she looked at him and she was like, I see you now. Like, I see who you are. And he got in her face and pointed his finger and he was like, you see me? Well, I see you too. She's like, if you don't get that finger out of my face. She remained calm and she told him, we've discussed this already. We're not going to be yelling in front of the children. I think that's a disagreement that we have. We will deal with it in private. But she set her boundaries and she stood 10 toes on it. And Byron says something to Camille like, I don't like the way you've been moving lately. You're moving like the enemy. Camille's looking at him like, I'm moving like somebody that doesn't trust you. She also mentioned he had 2 guitars, one of them being an acoustic one, and that one he had like a weird attachment to. He always like kept it near his side. Thinking back now, she's like, I'm pretty sure Paige's ring was like in that bag or something. Like something of value was within that guitar. Not to mention, he would get so mad when she would put her purse on her side of the bed and he would like grab her purse and be like, what, you think I'm gonna steal from you? What do you think I'm gonna do? Camille had her big girl pants on and she said, give me the keys to the Benz back. Can't have you driving around that anymore. And he looked at her and was like, you think I can't get with somebody? Even if I was driving a Fiat, I could get with somebody anytime, any place. And she was just like, do you, boo? Do you? But you're not gonna do it in my Benz. And then she gets the Benz back. Tell me why there's a massive dent in it, like a long dent. And when she asked him about it, of course he acts clueless. He's like, what are you talking about? She's like, there's 360 cameras on this thing. How do you hit anything with this car? When it came time for the Atlanta trip, he booked the flights, the hotel, all of that, right? So they get to Atlanta. They flew Spirit, obviously. They get to Atlanta. They go to book into the hotel, and because the whole Spirit flight was delayed and they couldn't get to Atlanta in time, they didn't get there until like way after check-in time. So the hotel was never communicated to that they were going to be late, so they, canceled the reservation. Because they landed in Atlanta at 2 o'clock in the morning, they ended up having to go straight to the event, sleep in the lobby of the event venue, and then get dressed in the bathrooms there. And then they were able to check into their hotel rooms later on that day. And so he's obviously in a bad mood. The speaking engagement that Byron was at was more like a church event, and it really moved Camille. She felt called to go up to the front and like be prayed for. And then she actually decided to get baptized that weekend as well. She had gotten baptized as a child, but she always wanted to do it as an adult as well. She had an amazing time. She met amazing people, and she felt really like pushed to like have a real conversation with Byron about his behavior and about the things that she has been enduring. Seemed really open to receiving her point of view and being like, yeah, you're right, I could do better, and so she was just like, wow. But in reality, he was probably so nervous about her saying anything to the people at that like event that he was willing to like agree and nod his head to anything she was going to talk about. So they get back from Atlanta, and now it's time to go to Hawaii with Luna and everybody. At first, Luna's not really excited, but as it becomes more and more clear that they're about to get to Hawaii, she gets more excited, and she even ends up saying something to Camille like, Camille, why are you paying for everything? And Camille said, yeah, Luna, why am I paying for everything? Luna was like, are you guys bringing me to Hawaii because you didn't take me on the baby moon? Is that why you're trying to make it up to me? Per usual, Byron didn't spend any time with the family. He was in the hotel room pretty much the entire time on Zoom, talking to all the people he had just met in Atlanta. He was really only coming out of the room for like excursions and for meals, but outside of that, he just stayed in the room and showed no enthusiasm for it being, his daughter's graduation and her birthday. And so on her actual birthday, Camille was like, hey, take her to get a photo shoot around the, hotel and stuff. Like, go have fun with her. Like, go do something. So he does it, but like obviously brings no enthusiasm to it. In Camille's mind, she knew this was going to be the last family vacation that they took. Byron didn't feel like he did anything wrong on the trip. He didn't feel like he ignored them or like brought bad vibes, nothing. And he didn't feel like he had anything to apologize for. Things like this and his lack of remorse made Camille feel not only was he narcissist, but he probably had sociopathic tendencies as well. At one point, the daughter didn't want to do like a certain activity in the pool, and Byron just gets like so pissed off. He like takes her out of the pool, takes her upstairs. After a while, Luna comes back and she's crying, and she tells Camille like, he called me the worst. And Camille's like, baby girl, it's fine, like go play, like have fun. When Camille confronted Byron about how he treated the daughter that day, he like brushed it off and was like, oh, she's just being sensitive, like it's not even that big of a deal. And instead of like apologizing to the daughter or talking about it in an open manner, he just makes jokes about it. He'll just like try to like laugh it off or make a joke about the very thing that like baby girl's crying about. And unfortunately, Byron would also triangulate the children against each other. He would favor one kid over the other or do things that made the other kid feel left out. Byron's mom is kind of picking up on a few things, and I think she asked Camille like, what's going on, and Camille just told her like, I'm overwhelmed. She ended up asking her that other name that he has tattooed with a a date of birth underneath the name. Is that his daughter? And, you know, Byron's mom's like, yeah, that's his daughter. This is also when Byron's mom tells her, this is why, you know, Byron doesn't like when I talk to you guys. He doesn't like when I talk to the baby mamas. Camille tries to bring up the fact that, you know, a lot of the stress is due to the fact that Byron won't work and that there's like a lot of financial issues. And like, you know, Byron's mom is like freaking out. She's looking at Byron like he's looking at us, like, cut the conversation. Camille ends up finding out that Byron has told many stories about that daughter that he doesn't want to claim. He says things like, oh, that's my military friend's daughter who died of cancer. He's come up with so many backstories for her. So while they're out there, again, Byron still wants to go ziplining with the daughter, but he tells Camille, like, hey, can I take the money out of the rent? And Camille's like, I specifically told you, you cannot take money out of the rent in order to pay for the ziplining. You were going to need to do both. And he's just like, well, I'm just not going to do ziplining then. And then she was like, damn, I'm disappointing baby girl though. She wants to do it. So she gives in and she decides to pay for the ziplining so that the daughter can do it. And at the same time, she was able to have a moment to herself with Neo and like let Byron and baby girl go off on the ziplining tour by themselves. So Camille goes to give Byron's mom some money back, and Byron's mom's like confused about like how much was supposed to be spent, who was paying for what. Again, just proving that Byron lies about everything and is never honest to anyone or tells anyone the full truth. When they get back from Hawaii, he's still, you know, disconnecting baby monitors. His lies are getting even more absurd. Now she's in planning mode. It took about 8 weeks for her to come up with her escape plan, and then she ends up buying like tracking devices, you know, smaller recording devices, just trying to get like a grip of her reality at this point. Camille was like, I can't afford for us to live here anymore. We're gonna need to move. I told you a long time ago to get a job. You didn't want to listen, so we're moving now. And at the same time, he all of a sudden is on the phone all the time with like a new person. She doesn't know who it is, but he's always on the phone. She said one time he showed her a video of a woman that held her husband down for 9 years. And she said, I didn't sign up for that. That'll never be us. I was the one that wanted to be a stay-at-home mom with Neo, and you took that away from me. So no, I will not be holding anything down for 9, 1, 2, any years for that matter. And then he had the gall to be like, oh, I want to be a stay-at-home dad. I think the wildest thing that he said to her was, oh, you should just go get a business loan so that you can float our personal expenses. And she was like, in what world would I put my business at jeopardy to pay for my personal expenses? What? No, go get a job, Byron. He ends up bringing the whole let's move to Georgia conversation back up. And she's like, yeah. Let's use your VA loan. You and your $2,100 that you'd be making every month. Let's move to Georgia. She's just playing along because at this point, she's just like, I'm going to break this lease. I'm not going to be with this man anymore. Why don't you send me some options? Let me take a look at them. She decided to stop cooking that vegan diet that he had them on, and she started cooking meat. She's like, if I'm going to be the one handling everything, paying for everything, we're going to eat what I want to eat. Camille goes on to explain the devaluation phase of being with a narcissist, and that's when they start to like basically do a smear campaign against you and start to say things to loved ones, mutual friends, to try to ruin your name and make it seem like you're the bad person and you're the reason why the relationship is going down the drain. And so he had apparently, when they came back, started telling people like, oh, she's cheating on me, all while knowing he's probably the one cheating on her. So because they couldn't afford to live where they were at the moment, they started looking for apartments. And he had just gotten a job at AT&T. So she's thinking like, we just need to pick an apartment that he can handle once I finally tell him that I'm leaving him, right? So she's helping him look for a place. He doesn't know that this is going to be his place, right? Just for him and his daughter. At the same time, they plan a trip to San Diego they're going to go to Sesame Place. And they were like, oh, let's, leave Neo with our parents because Sesame Place isn't appropriate for a baby. And they were just going to take Luna down there. They end up finding an apartment down the street from their house that they were living at now, and they decide to rent it. Also went ahead and looked up everything that she might need Byron to be there for when it came to Neo's things. She found out that she needed him to be there for Neo to get a passport. So she's like, I love to travel. He definitely is going to need a passport. Let's go ahead and secure that. So when they get to the passport office, he offers his ID card, and she's like, why are you giving your ID card? Where's your driver's license? I thought you said you took care of that, because she had told him because you're going to be driving around the kids, you need to make sure whatever needs to be get paid down on your driver's license gets handled. I'm not about to put my kids in danger. He's like, yeah, I'm going to take care of it. And then come to find out when they were at the passport office, of course he didn't pay for it. He was driving around the kids with no valid license, which obviously sent her. So they were trying to figure out things with the new apartment and trying to make sure that if things fell through, that they would be able to get their money back. And the apartment was like, yeah, of course. So they end up moving forward with that. She was picking up Luna one day, and Luna ends up telling her I'm scared to tell daddy some things because he's going to get mad at me, which, reveals she probably does lie sometimes in order to not upset her father. Camille was doing everything she could to avoid being home with that man. She would just stay out, go to friends, houses, go go to lunch and brunch with people. She was just like, I don't want to be around this man at all. When Byron had first moved in with Camille, he had told her like, hey, put me on your phone bill, like it'll be cheaper, da 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 da. So when she did that, she ended up getting access to obviously his call logs. So she ended up spreadsheeting his call logs and going through every single number and categorizing it. And then she was able to pinpoint a number that he was constantly calling. When she did the spreadsheet, she saw one specific number that he would like obsessively text. And that person was texting back until randomly the person stopped texting, and then Byron would just constantly be texting that number. And this is when Millie was like, oh, he actually made it really easy for me. When I told him to block everybody for my own convenience so I won't get stressed out, he basically put a list together of everyone that she probably should talk to. So she went into her blocked contacts and she started unblocking everybody. Camille was trying to do her best to make the transition for Luna as easy as possible, because again, she's like what now, the third woman that was going to be leaving Luna's life, and someone that she obviously had, you know, grown a bond to. And so she was like mostly distraught about that, like how Luna was going to react and how it was going to affect her, not just in the short term but also in the long term. So on the phone bill, she can go about like 18 months back, and the person he was obsessively texting lived in Oceanside, and she ended up finding out that person was also married. And she was like, I don't know if this is the husband's number, I don't know if this is the wife's number, I don't want to get involved in somebody else's quarrels. She was like, I'm just going to let it fly. Camille goes into something called corrective memory, where it's like your brain is going backwards and it's like letting you see things for what they are. And she was having a lot of those flashbacks where she was like, oh yeah, and then this, oh yeah, and then when this person hit him up, and then when that happened, and then this situation, like everything that she kind of like brushed off and was like, oh, it's nothing, because she was such in the idea of like having him, were all being revealed to her. Camille even remembers one time she looked over his phone once. She swears she saw like a random body part. She was just like, what does this man be looking at? So now that Byron is under the impression that they're moving, she starts packing up things, she starts labeling things. She's secretly labeling stuff in a way that her, you know, family can realize like which is her things and which is his. And she was going to leave a few things for the baby girl. So now she's fully executing her escape plan. Because Byron was still an authorized user on her Verizon account, he ended up going and getting a brand new phone and getting a $2,200 iPad. And she was just like, why would he do that? But obviously he knew something was in the water. He's been through this before, you know? And so she, before like leaving him, obviously removed him as a authorized user on all of her accounts. And then she started plotting on that iPad. She's like, I'm not gonna let him leave with that. So they decide that they're gonna go to, you know, San Diego. They're gonna go to Sesame Place, and then they're gonna go to SeaWorld. So they get to San Diego. There's no gym in the hotel. There's like an MMA boxing place across the street. So he ends up going over there to get a workout. He comes back and he's like, yeah, I took him out. I took that guy out. Camille's like, what do you mean took him out? She's like, I took him out. And she's like, what are you? Like, what's going on with you? He's like, what do you mean? I'm a trained unaliver. This obviously made not only Camille, but his daughter, like, extremely uncomfortable. They were just sitting on the bed like, okay, bro, cool story. While they were in San Diego, Camilla took Luna over to Carlsbad so she can buy her like all of her school uniforms, the things that she needed, just making sure that she had all the stuff that she might need in order to be successful, because she knew when she got back to LA, she was going to leave this man. Byron had told Camille that Sesame Place was inside of SeaWorld, which it wasn't. Sesame Place was like 30 minutes away. So they end up getting in the car, they drive over to Sesame Place. They have a time there. And at that point, they finish up there. Then they drive back to SeaWorld so they can finish that as well. When they get to SeaWorld, Byron's trying to like criticize other women for their bodies, and he's trying to like bait Camilla into saying something as well. And she's just like, no, I'm not going to say anything. Like, it's fine. Like, whatever. And then he starts growing a little suspicious. When he can't access the little like pet monitor, he's like gets a little suspicious. He's like, what's going on with the Wi-Fi back home? And she's like, I don't know. Her sister was staying with them, and he was like, is your sister over there? She's like, oh, I don't think so. He ends up calling her sister from like a fake number. Her sister picks up and she's like, hello. And he's like asking her like, what's wrong with the Wi-Fi? And she's like, oh, I'm not home right now. I'll go check when I get back there. And he's like, oh, okay. Byron was making fun of everyone during this trip. Other people, his daughter, everybody, especially like this one white family. And I don't know if the daughter joined in, but Camille was like, stop it, don't do that. Like, she's part white. Like, why are you teaching her self-hate? Like, don't do that. Don't be weird. So they drive back to LA. They finally get back. Her family hits her up and they're like, hey, we got most of your stuff out. You're good to go, right? So she had written a letter for Byron to read, and she had safety locked Luna's door. They pull up to the house. He hops out. She's like, okay, what's my move here? I need to get the iPad back. I need to talk to, you know, Luna and tell her what's going on. And I need him to know, like, I'm leaving him, right? So the minute he hops out, he's stretching. He's like, hey, pop the trunk, because he wants to get his stuff out. So she's like, okay. She waits for him to, like, close the door. Baby girl's, like, struggling with the door. He closes his door. She peels off She leaves. Luna's in the back like, you left daddy. Like, where are you going? Like, you left daddy. She just dips out. She goes around the corner. She looks at Luna and she goes, baby girl, I'm leaving your dad. I can't do this anymore. I can't be around him. I can't be in the same room as him. He's been cheating on me. He's been lying to me. He's not who he said he was. She just starts spilling everything and she starts crying. And of course, Luna's heartbroken. She's like, what? No, take me with you. Camilla's like, no, I can't. And, you know, she didn't go very far. She just went around the corner. Byron obviously made his way into the house. He's read the letter. He's blowing up Camille's phone. He's telling her, like, bring back my stuff, bring back my iPad, bring back my daughter, da-da-da-da. Camille's trying to explain to Luna, I can't take you. It would be considered kidnapping. Like, I have to take you back to your, you know, your father's house. And so she's, at this point, she's like trying to figure out what she should do next because she wants Byron to calm down. She's like, there's no way I'm going to let her go see that empty house, and I'm not going to let her see her dad having this reaction right now. So she calls Byron's mother. She tells her, like, I'm leaving your son, da-da-da-da. And then, you know, the mom's like, I knew it. I knew something was wrong when we were in Hawaii. Camille also tells Byron's mom, like, he's been telling everybody I've been cheating on him. And then Byron's mom, like, yeah, he did tell me that, but obviously I didn't believe him. And so she basically tells Camille, like, take Luna over to my sister's house, to her great auntie's house. She's like, okay, bet. She takes her over there. You know, she's saying goodbye. She's taking all the stuff out of the car. Byron's auntie is like, don't bring that stuff over here. I don't want nothing to do with him, because she already knew, like, with anything with Byron is a bad idea. So she puts Byron's stuff back into the car. She lets Luna go. She gives her a hug. She tells her, like, here's my phone number. Call me anytime. And, you know, Byron had promised Luna he would get her a phone, but he never did. But she was like, if you ever get a chance or need to talk to me, here's my number. She gets back in the car. At this point, Byron's mom calls her and she's like, hey, he's on his way over there. He thought that you went to your parents' house. He knows that you're at the auntie's house. Leave now. So she dips out. And then Byron's like, I need my stuff. I need my stuff. So she goes back to the house, puts it on the stairs, and she's like, your stuff is at the house. Good riddance, right? And he's like, yeah, whatever. When Camille found out that he was on his way over there, she was like, how did he even get a ride? Like, and she realized, oh, he does have this cousin that she's never met that lives in that area. He must have hopped in the car with that cousin. Camille moves in with Neo into her parents' house, starts rebuilding her life, has so much debt to pay down. She said she had about like $15,000 to pay down, along with just like rebuilding back her clientele because of COVID and everything else, having a baby. She lost like a good third of her clientele. So she was like, I gotta, you know, work this back up. And that's all she was focused on, honestly. Like, she was like, good riddance. He ends up like messaging her shortly after that, like, and you're not going to keep me from my son. I need to see my son. So she agrees. They meet at a park across the street from the apartment, and she still had a few things in the house that she needed to get out. While she's with Neo, Luna, and Byron, because she's going to make sure she keeps an eye on Neo, her sister and her mom were going to go to the house and get the rest of her stuff out. When she gets over there, they knock on the door, and the cousin opens the door. And they're like, oh, are you the cousin that, like, we've never met before? And he's like, yeah, but you guys can't come inside. My cousin told me one thing and one thing only, and that was not to let anybody in here. And Camille's like, what does he even have in there? Most of that stuff is mine anyway. So after playing around with the kid for a while, they pack up, they walk back over, and Camille goes inside, and the cousin's still trying to be on some weird stuff. And she's like, look, this is my house. Just because I moved out doesn't mean, like, I can't come in here. I pay the bills. Get out of my face. She goes in, she grabs the rest of her stuff. Luna was helping her move some things into the car. When she got down there, Luna runs up to Camille, gives her a hug really quickly. She says, I miss you, turns around and runs off. And of course, Byron was standing right there, and Camille knew. He must have told her something like, don't talk to her, don't look at her, because even when they were at the park, Luna would not look at Camille. She would not acknowledge her. She was just playing with Neo, her little brother. And Camille was like, whatever is best for her to like process, I'm going to allow. But when she hugged her, that sent Camille. She just started crying. Ultimately, Byron's mom was like, Camille, I know you're going to take great, care of my grandson. You do well with Neo. Good luck with everything. And then Camille's like, why does this sound like a goodbye? Like, we're going to be seeing you, right? Byron's mom was like, sure. Never spoke to her, never saw her again after that day. And that was in August 2023 when she first left this man. So she starts to realize that like not only his siblings, but his whole family will like stop messing with the baby mama the moment Byron is done messing with them as well. They're all cut from the same cloth. Like his brother too is the same, where he has a bunch of kids. I think he has like 5 kids from like 3 baby mamas. The mom apparently has very narcissistic tendencies, just like a whole family of like trouble. Camille told them like, hey, I have some like miles if you want to go back to Colorado with Luna, with your mother. Like that's totally fine with me. I can help you guys get back. But he didn't. He stayed in that apartment for a bit. When she went over there to grab her stuff at the last time, he had like set up his bed on the floor and took the dresser, which she had actually like specifically specifically left for Luna, but she was like, of course he took it. I think it's a perfect example of what it is to deal with a narcissist and the different levels of like roller coaster they take you through. All of these women went through such a horrible thing and they had to experience this, and it is one thing that kind of ties them together now. But I do wish like immense healing to each of these women. To be lied to and to be played like, it does almost irreparable damage on your psyche, on your ability to trust yourself, to trust your decision making, to know that you're doing what's best for you. They really do a number. I call it mental circus. They played the craziest mental circus on you. I really hope that you guys continue to seek support, seek love, seek healing, and whatever your God, your universe, I hope that you continue seeking that spiritual connection too, because that really does fill back your cup. I really am sending you guys a lot of love. All these women have a very similar story, and they all have one purpose: to share it and to let women know about this horrifying man, to especially let that girl in Atlanta know, oh, here's the kicker. The girl in Atlanta, she's pregnant. She's already pregnant. He just proposed to her. This Tinder swindler is still at it. And he just basically ran through the West Coast and said, you know what, let me move over to the South and see what, damages I can do there. You guys asked for this so much. I want you to know this is the last time I'm doing a 60-part story. I've been sitting at this desk since 10:30. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I haven't ate, but either way, I'm glad I got to share this with you guys. I appreciate you guys as always. I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye.